risk register. How the title says, risk register is a table, simply a table, in which you put all the risks. So you list all the risks that you think are in a project. That risk register, there is several formats on the internet, several people adapt risk register. I'm just showing how one type of risk register that works for me. Doesn't mean that risk register will work for every project. But I would say that's pretty effective to use that approach. Can you see that risk register? We have 4 colors: yellow, orange, blue, and green. Yes, you see that? So let's put it here. I don't have yellow, but I can put. So we have. I put the yellow as a outline with black. So we have yellow, okay. Then we have orange. Then we have blue, and then we have area green. In each of those areas, we have some columns. The number of columns depend on the columns, okay? And we have lines that we register. So that's simply a table. In the yellow part, we do what is called the yellow part. We do what is called step 1, that is risk ID or identification. That's the step that we learned last class. So the brainstorm, and then here you'll be putting the name, you'll have the risk ID, the WSID, knowing that risk is related, and the risk description. Okay? Description. Okay? Each line will be writing down in each line the risks. So each risk goes in one line. Okay? So that's the first part. When you see that yellow label, yellow area, I would say that that's the step 1 of the risk management process. The orange is the step 2. The step 2 is risk assessment. Okay? So we'll be now here using those fields in the table to give a numeric score for probability and impact. That's the second part. So those are we have seen so far. You have a third area that we will be seeing today. That is the step 3, that what we call risk response. And we have a step 4. Step 4, that we risk control. Okay? So the risk register is a table. Usually I use a spreadsheet in which we put the name of the risks, then put some numerical scores for probability and impact on the orange area. And then I always include here the type of response that I'll be doing for that risk. But let's keep that blue and green after the exercise that we'll be doing now. Okay? So if you can see on that table, and I will be back to my let's do the exercise. So in that table here, let's just open up a little bit and understand things. So what we do here is, so let's take that Manchester soccer tournament that we worked on that example last class. And let's say that for that project, we listed 7 risks from A to G. Okay, 7 risks. In the area, in the column of risk ID, we give an ID, risk 1, 2, 3, or you can put letters and numbers, whatever you need to. It's easier for the project that you are working. Some people put a letter and an ID. The letter relates to the department of the type of area in the project. The second column, of course, all the risks must be linked to an activity, a subdeliverable, or a deliverable. And in that case, you put here in those columns the WBS ID in which that risk is related to. And here we have, so that yellow area comes from the risk ID. You do the brainstorm, interview people, and you list all the risks. You can have maybe 50, 40, 45, 37 risks listed in that spreadsheet. Okay, with all the risk here, we describe the risk, what is the risk, when it happened, where, hint of the consequence of impact. Those are the risks here. Once you do that, you finalize the first step of the risk management process, that is risk identification. And you move to the step 2, in which you'll be giving scores to the risk. Let's do one example here on the top. Referees failing to show up at designated games. Let's suppose how I can discover that. Let's suppose that you are that project manager of that tournament, that soccer tournament, and you want to give a probability for that. How can we estimate a probability? So you can track the record of previous tournaments. Then you go historical data. You have maybe 10 tournaments, 20 games in each tournament, so 200 games. And you say how many times I have a referee not show up for games. And you say 40 times. Okay? 40 times, it's 20%, 1 in 5. And I would put it here as a probability of 2. Okay? Of happening. Low probability. It's not very low, it's low. Some cases you can say even medium if you want. Depend on the historical data that you have of similar tasks. Similar, in that case, the games. To evaluate the impact, you have to assume that a referee didn't show up. Now it's not more a probability. You have to consider that, assume that that risk has happened. And you may say, would that impact on the scope? For a tournament, one measure of scope would be all the games, number of the games. If you'll be canceling the game or not, or if you'll be playing all the games or not. Probably you'll be playing all the games. You may reschedule, but you'll be playing all the games. So you will be not affecting the scope, or the impact on the scope is very low. The quality. And now you have to see all the participants in the tournament, what they will think about the quality of the tournament if the referee don't show up for a game. So that maybe has a high impact on the customer or participant expectation and may affect the quality. And scheduling. So if a referee doesn't show up, you have to reschedule the game. So there is a pretty high or impact on schedule. Maybe you have some impact on cost. If you have to rent additional time for the field in which the soccer tournament is taking place. Maybe not. Let's suppose that I put here a 3. Okay? So here we have individual impact analysis for each of the 4 major project constraints: scope, schedule, cost, and quality. How the average of those 4, 1 plus 4, 5, plus 4, 9, plus 3, 12, divided by 4, 3. I put a formula here. Average of these 4 numbers, 3. Let's skip. And what is the risk value? The risk value is the average impact times the probability. 2. 3 times 2, 6. So, and that's how we have to do the step 2, the risk assessment. We have to do the same analysis for all the project risks, all the way through, top to bottom. Top to bottom, you have to do that analysis. So, the most important risk. The second risk is abusive behavior along the sidelines by parents. That's very common. And then fight between teams, number 3. the important here that you understand the risk assessment piece. The risk assessment is when you are evaluating the probability of occurring, step one, and give some scores that range from very low, low, medium, high, and very high. And for each one of them, you go from scores 1 to 5. Then you find the impact on each major project constraint, that is from scope, quality, schedule, and cost. And from there, you can see which risks are the most important. What I can do here, let's suppose I can come here and I can sort range. I can go for column J from higher to low. And what happened here, you can see that on the top, I have the three most important risks. Okay, and we do that because the third step on the risk management process, we just prepare the response for the most important risk. I would say 10% of the risk, 20% of the risk. So what we did so far is to conclude these two steps over here. And we did that using a risk register that has some 4 parts on the risk register. We fill out the risk ID, that's step 1. Then we fill out the step and did the risk assessment. And we ranked the risks from the most critical to the least critical. Here, now we'll be moving to the step 3, in which we'll be developing a strategy to reduce the possible damage just for the top risks. And let's take that example, the group 1. So what they did, so they said that the main risk is pivotal error committed by a referee. What they did to mitigate is to have a second opinion, a third referee view using record video game, so that you can have someone record the game. That's very expensive. Okay? So you have to see, to evaluate if it's worth the investment and the benefit of that. But anyway, by investing that, doing that, according to their analysis of the group 1, they reduce the risk value from 12.5 to 9.75. And that is a analysis in which you may decide to implement or not that response. The second is not enough teams. And here they put execute immediate in order to have larger impact on the people. There are deadline for registration. Maybe you can say reduce price. And here, maybe that's a low cost effort. And according to their analysis, it reduced the risk value from 12.25 to 2.2. That's very effective, actually. And that is the idea of risk response. You create a risk response, then you have to reassess the probability and the impact to double check if that response is actually reducing or mitigating the risk. Maybe not, maybe yes. So that's depending on the analysis. And again, the risk register that I'm providing to you, each section of the risk register represent one step of the risk management process. That's about risk response. Now let's talk about risk control. That is the last area of the matrix. Is the green area here. Those things when you'll be executing the project. So the first 3 steps is during the planning. The 4th step is during the execution. So if you can assign some people for each event, or each risk. So take one risk here, risk number 3, and assign someone to monitor and control that risk. And you may say here that Steve is the guy that will be monitoring the risk. The other risk will be Americo. The third risk will be Mar. At the beginning of the project, I would say that all risks are active. Okay? Active. All risks are active. So they start with the risk is active. Once you move on your Gantt chart and you execute the task without problems, you can come here and change the status for inactive. Okay, that's just one way of doing things. And in some situations, and then let's say you have 20 risks and you want to keep track of the risk, you say, I just want to see the active risks. So, and here you can filter the risks that are active. You can have other status if the risk is canceled, if the risk has occurred, and you can add comments, but that's a way of managing the risks when you start moving the project. Just a parenthesis here. So each risk has one WBS ID, okay? Has a WBS ID here. So, and that WBS ID in your project schedule will be executed on a certain moment and certain date. So what is nice to have as well is the week before, so every week you go and display the activities for the next week. When you display the activities that will be executed in the following week during the execution phase, you come to your risk register and try to understand if there is any activity risk related to the task that will be executed in the following week. And that's the way you can assess and filter, see the WBS ID, connect the risk, and that's the way we do risk control when we are executing the project. Okay, that's very important. Risk control when you're executing the project. Actually, what I do always, that's my way of doing. When I'm executing the project every week by Wednesday, I try to understand what are the activities that will be starting on the following week. And I try to see if there is any risk active for those activities. And actually, I look all the activities and I do a small risk assessment in all the activities of the following week. So I can review the risks and review the activity. And sometimes I include another risk if something happened. If maybe which you change the person that was executing the task. Before there was someone that was very experienced, and now is someone that's not have that experience. So it may add some risks in terms of duration. That person may take longer to do the task. So I think that you may think about. Okay. So what we do in the risk control is execute the risk response strategy, monitoring and triggering events, initiating contingency plan, watching for new risks. Sometimes, if the risk happened, you have to start the change management process. If you see that a risk happened and you have to change something in the project, there is a very close relationship in the risk control and change management process. Because if the risk happened, you may trigger the change management process. So we have in the risk management process 4 steps. 3 of them we do during the planning: risk identification, risk assessment, risk response, and one of them we do during the execution. So that is on the planning, okay, and this is during the execution. Of course, if you go and try to understand, do your analysis and increasing the level of details, anytime that you are doing the analysis, you may find new risks, okay? And so you should include those risks in the risk register. So the risk register is a document that consolidates the information of the risk management process. You list the risk, you put the assessment, you can input the response, who is managing each risk. That is the risk register. We work hard to help you to get better marks, be prepared for job interviews, and excel in work meetings. You can send your questions in the comment area below. I will be pleased to answer all of them. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Américo e-Learning.